If you thought the last one was a slog, wait till you watch this one. Pretty boring subject matter, but it still ended up being almost 80 frickin' slides. Now, let's plow through this, just like I plowed your mom. This is a little bit of a rehash of my earlier video on the subject, but with narration and with going into more detail, because I care. After experimenting with a locally made 7.62 by 39 millimeter version of the Sturmgewehr and a long, problematic pre production process that was so bad they made factory workers pay for rejected receivers, the East Germans started serial production of the AK and the AKS as the MPi K and MPi KmS on the 31st of December 1959. The factory names were Garat K31.031 and Garat K31.032, respectively. This was changed in 1961 to Garat 910K and Garat 910S. Man, working on New Year's Eve and they made you buy rejected parts? Dude, what a shit job. Initially, both the Garata and Werkzeugbau factory in Wiesa and the Fahrzeug- and Jagdwaffenwerk Ernst Dahlmann in Suhl did final assembly, but this was quickly consolidated to Wiesa. Wiesa, Suhl, and almost 20 different factories produced the parts. In 1960, almost 32,000 were made, with the MPi KmS being the first pieces off the production line. The next year, total production more than doubled. In contrast to the rest of the Warsaw Pact, the East Germans incorporated more than just local markings and furniture. The front sling loop is larger, and the cleaning rod was omitted, as the East Germans issued a cleaning kit with a traditional German pull cord. The issue of luminous night sights was more common as well. The fixed stock rifle was the MPi K, or Maschinenpistole Kalashnikov, or submachine gun Kalashnikov. The folding stock AKS was the MPi KmS, or Maschinenpistole Kalashnikov mit klappbarer Schulterstütze, or submachine gun Kalashnikov with folding shoulder stock. My apologies for the rough German pronunciation, but all my German comes from old war movies, Ramstein, or visiting the Poof House. Probably to see your mom. Here we have MPi K serial number 1. This, like most of the rifles in this video, came from the vault at the Bundeswehr Museum in Dresden, Germany. If you notice, the receiver looks a little bit off when compared to the production guns. As I hinted earlier, the East Germans had a bit of difficulty creating the milled receiver. Also notice the Mauser-style sling attachment. This seems to have only been used on the Null or Zero series rifles. Null series in German weapon vernacular is basically a prototype or a pre-production gun. A batch of 80 Null series rifles were made. Only a handful survive today. A 1960 dated MPi KmS. 1960 being the first year of serial production, as you can't really count New Year's Eve. The pistol grip is checkered. This seems to have been dropped pretty early. Handguard, not really sure what's going on there or why it doesn't match. It's possibly a replacement. Now we have a 1961 folder. After the checkered grip was dropped, there wasn't any parts evolution until 1964. The furniture might be darker or lighter, but that was because the beech wood furniture was raw from the factory, with individual users oiling it. Naturally, there's going to be variation in that process. Some soldiers rub their wood more than others, as has been the case since the beginning of time. From 1962, we have two fixed stock rifles and two folders with photographs of various quality. One was photographed in Dresden, another in the Wehrtechnik Sammlung in Koblenz, and two from Holland. As you can see, pretty boring, pretty routine stuff. So a big shout out to the three guys that are still watching at this point. Now, to avoid awkward silences or me insulting your intelligence, let's have some music. For 1963, we have three rifles. The first two are standard fixed stock rifles, both of which came out of the vault in Dresden. The second rifle has what looks like refinished Soviet handguards. The East Germans did use Soviet AKs, and of course, they never threw anything away, so there we go. Then we have a neat Scharfschützengewehr or sharpshooter's rifle. These are standard rifles, but with a scope rail welded on, and then fitted with a 4-power Zeiss Jena scope. Finally, from 1963, that we have a cutaway trainer that used to be in my personal collection. Original cutaways and other purpose-built trainers are always good pieces to look at, as they were never fired, they weren't dragged through the mud by Hans and Franz for 20 years, so they were never rebuilt, and usually are all factory original parts. Almost last is 1964. A couple subtle changes. The East Germans built the first pre production AKMs that year, so some parts carried over. The first rifle, based on the serial number, was made last, but is still rocking a smooth top cover. The other rifles all have their new AKM style ribbed top cover. Also, notice that they started to use rear sight leaves that were color filled. Some sources say that East German MPi K production ended in 1966, but as best as I can tell, 1964 is the last year of production. East German AKM pre production started in 1964, with full serial production starting in 1965, so that makes sense that they would completely change over. Our last East German rifle is a 1964 dated sharpshooting rifle. Same configuration as the rifle we showed earlier, but obviously with the 1964 parts changes. It also has a neat K3 stamping, which is the same stamp that the East Germans used on AKMs. Here is a neat Soviet AKS that was reblued and fitted with East German furniture. All the proper proof marks points to this having been a complete rifle and not simply parts assembled by the East Germans. I almost forgot I had these, but here's a neat 1961 dated MPi KmS that was rebuilt, probably in the 70s or 80s. Notice it has a plastic handguard and pistol grip that were introduced for the East German AKM. The lower handguard is some weird oddball replacement as well. All right, well, till next time, thank you for watching. Now, please consider watching some of my other videos where I will make you work on New Year's Eve in a dark, depressing factory without the proper tooling and blueprints, then charge you for the fucked up parts.